So originally, I felt called to fostering because I wanted to make a difference in a child's life who needed stability and love. But once I learned more about the need, it just stayed in my heart that I just felt like I had to keep helping as many children as I could.
Supporting foster parents is prevention because when foster parents are set up for success, kids are going to be more stable and the outcomes improve.
Welcome to the Institute's Child Welfare Podcast. I'm your host, Vivian Ko. This episode is titled Partners in Prevention, Insights from Foster Parents. And I'm joined now by foster parents Lori Chapman and Selena Garrison. Lori is a dedicated foster and adoptive parent with over 23 years of experience, caring for 12 daughters, 2 biological, 9 adopted, and 1 currently in foster care. She is a secondary special program teacher and serves in a variety of roles for multiple organizations, including Tender Loving Caregivers, or TLC Association, Florida Foster and Adoptive Parent Association, and Care Portal, which is designed to help vulnerable children and families. Selena and her husband are foster and adoptive parents of nearly 10 years. In addition to their 2 biological children, have cared for 19 children in their home, including 2 whom they've adopted. She has a PhD in youth development from the University of Florida and serves as study coordinator for the Florida Youth Experiences Study. She serves on the boards of the Florida Foster and Adoptive Parent Association and the Fostering Foundation, and she shares about life as a foster and adoptive mom on her blog, Memoirs of a Middle Mama. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having us.
So I want to start by asking both of you to briefly share about what brought you into foster parenting. So Lori, would you like to start?
Yes, originally I felt called to fostering because I wanted to make a difference in a child's life who needed stability and love. But once I learned more about the need, it just stayed in my heart that I just felt like I had to keep helping as many children as I could.
And Selena, how about you?
For me, this actually started really young. I was about 7 years old when I found out that my dad had been raised in foster care for most of his childhood. It was a surprise. I learned that my grandmother, who I had always just known her as my grandmother, was actually his foster mom who took him in when he was 9, and then he lived with her until he got married at the ripe old age of 19. And that really shaped how I saw foster care. It wasn't this abstract thing, it was very personal, and it was my family, so it was kind of just in my blood. And as I got older, that idea stayed with me. And when my husband and I were in a place where we had the space, we felt like this was something that we were really supposed to step into. Not really because we thought we had the answers, but we understood from my dad's experience how much it can matter for a child to have someone who chooses to show up and stay for them.
Right. It's funny you say that because when I was 17 and thinking about college, I saw a show about foster kids aging out. And in that moment, for whatever reason inside, I was like, I'm going to foster these older teens so that they have somewhere to come home for the holidays, right? Like just someone there for them. So, like, if they had a flat tire or had questions about some things, they would have a safe adult that they knew that they could just answer those questions for, right? I was just in that space, right? Like, so I think that person showing up is just really, really important. So both of you have done this for quite some time. What keeps you engaged in this work?
I would definitely say the children because watching them grow and heal and succeed, sometimes even in the smallest ways, it is so big in their eyes. And knowing even though they're hard, they're still learning. And that's always worth it.
For me, absolutely, I agree with Lori. Of course, it's the kids. That's always the heart of it. Something else that's really sustained us over time is the community that we've built. We're surrounded by other foster and adoptive families who really get it. So we've got specific organizations in our area, like the Fostering Foundation and the Pearl Project, who, we've worked to build relationships with people who understand, the highs and the challenges and sort of everything in between. And I feel like having that kind of community really changes everything. It takes something that can feel really sort of isolating and turns it into something shared. So for me, foster care can feel very isolating, but the right kind of community can make it sustainable.
That's so true. I used to tell people fostering was like being in a clique, right? It's a group of individuals that have this shared experience, and that unless you've been in a situation where, like, at 9 o'clock at night, you're getting a knock on the door and this scared child is there coming into your home and you have to help them settle and get to sleep because the next morning is going to be so busy for them. Our friends and family can support us in providing, meals and babysitting, but to really understand that moment, having community that understands that and can provide that support is so important. So I think, as you mentioned, the community and the support really helps foster parents stay ready to do this work continuously, but also maybe, address some of the prevention stuff, with having to deal with kiddos with behaviors and things like that. So thinking about that, when you think about preventing challenges or supporting positive outcomes for youth, what does that look like in your day to day?
For me, it's definitely consistency and connection. We actually have eating schedules, 7 o'clock, breakfast, 10 o'clock, snack, noon, 3 o'clock snack, dinner, 7 o'clock snack. My first adopted children, one didn't want to eat, wanted to be playing basketball. So I made her sit at every time and then she ate. So it was just being consistent. If you came to my house, my youngest would say, "How old are you?" "Okay, well, you shower before me and you sit here in the truck." So it sounds harsh, I think, sometimes to some people, but it's just consistency. You shower by age, and it's just clear instructions.
Wow, that's fantastic. And again, I think unless you've done this and you've fostered a lot of kids and you've had a lot of kids in your home where you only have limited showers and limited time, you have to have routine. You have to have these processes in place. Otherwise, it would be chaos every night, right? Like cooking meals for such a large group of individuals and not having that time and routine, it would just, things always come up. So, yeah, that's fantastic.
Absolutely. And along those lines, for us, a lot of what prevention looks like now is shaped by using trust based relational intervention, or TBRI, in our home, which I know Lori does too. And that framework really shifted how we approach behavior, maybe from how we were raised and how behavior was handled. Instead of asking, how do I stop this behavior that's happening? We're asking, what does this child need right now? What is this behavior expressing? What is the need that's being expressed? And how can we help meet that need for the child so that they can feel safe and regulated? So, day to day prevention looks like being proactive, meeting those needs early. Like Boy's talking about, having those schedules is meeting the need early because the child knows what to expect. So, meeting those needs early, building connection consistently, really focusing on connection and building attachment with the children, and creating that predictability of things like schedules and knowing what the routine looks like and what kind of food we have available to eat and those sorts of things. It's noticing when a child is getting overwhelmed before it escalates, and then stepping in with regulation and support that we've practiced ahead of time instead of waiting for a crisis. Those are some huge things. So it takes extra time. It takes a lot of intentionality to help prepare children in advance while they are calm for situations that can come up later. And hopefully, throughout that process, it helps to start limiting the times that those situations occur.
I've heard multiple times TBRI mentioned with foster parents. Can both of you share a little bit about what it was like before TBRI? And, you mentioned some of the things you're implementing now, but how does that look different in your home?
Well, I started in 2003 and I had three sisters and I started in Pennsylvania. They had a fourth sister and I begged for them to let me have this little girl, let me have this little girl. Well, when she came, she brought chaos. We were in the psych ward every weekend at the hospital, her getting evaluated, my other kids staying home. They can't go swimming because now we're tied up. I just didn't have the training. And I feel now I could have probably helped her much more. There were some issues that happened and she was never able to talk about it. And I think she held a lot of that in and she just lashed out to her sisters and my other children. In the beginning, I won't lie. They said, "Oh, give them choices." I'm like, "What choices?" No, they don't give choices, but put your shoes away. I don't want to. Well, here, put them here or put them here. More choices. Definitely have to learn to listen to them more and not just hear them because I was kind of a dismissive parent. Oh, look at my pretty picture. Oh, that's so nice. Put it on the fridge. Now I take a time and I look and I go, oh, you use nice colors, So I have to slow down. So I'm not a dismissive parent, but really and truly, just to see how little bit I must have taken TBRI 12 times, and I learned something each time. And in the same videos, I still watch intently to watch these videos, even though they were the same. So I see that the weighted blankets we use now, I see the weighted backpacks. Like, I was like, why is that kid walking around with a backpack? Then I learned later on that it regulates them. So I have backpacks in my house. I have shoe cubbies. So now they put their shoes in a cubby. Why? Because your name's on it, so it's kind of basic that they do it. Their backpacks are hung up on a hook with their name on it. Why? Because that's where you're going to put it, not on the floor. And I have 4, 11, 13, 13, 16, and 18 home right now. I mean, 18, 16 will bring their stuff to the room, but everybody else has to have it in the bonus room. So we know where it is tomorrow morning. We empty out our backpack. So it's just consistency that helps me do what I'm doing right now because did you brush your teeth? Did you brush your hair? Bring me a brush. Yeah, I have a brush tied up next to my chair because there's always brushes and scissors missing no matter what you do. I'm actually interested in taking it again. They offered it and I wasn't able to, but I would love to be able to take it again. I just think every little bit is just something new.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I think for me, we had 2 biological children when we started fostering. They were young, they were 5 and 1, and then our first placement was a newborn, and up until he was about 2, things were going pretty normally as they do for newborns. Once he got to be around 2, we started noticing some behaviors that were very different from what we had experienced with our biological children. And we had gotten this child straight from the hospital. He had not experienced the kind of trauma that we think about oftentimes with children who come into foster care older. But I did not understand anything about in utero trauma, how those things impact behaviors, any of that. So that's really how we started researching TBRI. Thankfully, we had the Pearl Project that was sort of just launching at that time and starting to talk about these things in trust based relational intervention. But thinking specifically about how it's changed our parenting, I think about that shift from focusing on behavior as intentional disobedience, perhaps, to focusing on behavior as communication. So this child is behaving this way not because they're trying to give me a hard time. They're behaving this way because they're having a hard time. And I need to figure out what is causing that and how I can help create a solution. So it is some of those things that Lori talked about, like offering choices and sharing power, which feels really uncomfortable sometimes if you've been raised that the parent is the one in charge and the child doesn't have that power. So just a really big shift in mindset about behavior and consequences and punishment and discipline. It's a big shift from traditional parenting, which can work very well for many children, but a shift in that parenting to working specifically with children whose brains have developed differently.
Right. No, so true. I think when we teach new foster parents and we work with new foster parents, especially foster parents who have bio kids of their own, how they've raised their child that is biologically there, that has been through, they know all the steps. It's definitely very different when you are raising a kiddo who has potentially been through a lot. And what that looks like as they present in behaviors is very different. I think that what we know as or think of as traditional parenting is natural because that's just again how we're raised. But for these kiddos, it doesn't work because they don't have that attachment to you yet, right? They don't feel that they trust you to do what is right for them and care for them. And so having traditional parenting, I think there's a trust that originally starts. So I think TBRI is what helps build that, right? You're building that trust with the kiddo for them to see you are someone who's there to care for them and be there for them. It sounds like mindset is the biggest thing, right? There's some changes, like even Laura, you said, like giving choices is not necessarily saying, yes, you put your shoes away or no, you don't put your shoes away. It's you put it here or here. So they have the feeling like there's a little bit of autonomy, right? We still need them to be safe. So you guys have shared what tends to help go well in your home routines. TBRI has really helped changing mindset. What tends to make things harder?
I can answer that one first if you'd like. what helped things go well, is feeling supported, informed, included as part of the team. For us, what makes things harder in our home are the gaps, especially around communication and access to services. So there's like the day to day stuff that can get hard with behaviors, but systemically, the things that make it hard are when we don't have the communication that we need, the documentation that we need, the services that we need. We've had situations where we've waited months, sometimes even up to 18 months for needed evaluations or services for kids with really significant emotional or behavioral needs. And during that time, whether it's a month or 2 months or 18 months, we're still trying to parent and support a child without having the full picture or the right level of care or the accesses to service that we need. And that makes things incredibly hard, especially when you have multiple children in the home who might be having their own sets of circumstances that all need supports that either we don't have access to or perhaps don't exist. So for us, often the hardest moments aren't just about meeting the child's needs in the moment or dealing with the behavior in the moment. They're about delays and breakdowns in the system around them, but isn't providing the support that we need as foster parents or the support that they need as children in care.
So not having those supports.
Yeah, like foster parents can manage hard behaviors, but those long delays without support make those situations so much harder for everyone involved, especially for the children.
They just think that it stops. Okay, so she had a meltdown last night. And okay, well, we'll see you Friday. Well, what am I going to do till Friday? Call the crisis line. Okay, what are they going to do for me? Like, so I needed like a whole list of resources. Like now I have, I think, up to three different crisis avenues that I could call. It's communication and it's you need to answer the phone when I call you. You can't let me go to voicemail and you can't tell me to wait till Monday. So when they're having a meltdown, you need help then.
You guys both, I know, are very involved, not just with the kiddos in your home, but with your communities, with your local organizations, with the State Foster Association. So if you could redesign training to truly support you and other foster parents and prevent common challenges, what would that look like?
I would definitely say more real life training, less theory. You put a backpack on a child because it worked in the past. It might not work for your child. I've gone through MAP. I've also like been there to promote TLC, but you're not there at like 10 o'clock at night when you're wondering if you're going to call the police or if you're going to call the crisis and no one else is going to be there at 10 o'clock. All the training that they have right now doesn't fit all sizes. So I just think that it should be more case specific and real life because my real life experience with a 4 year old is definitely different than Selena's relationship with a 4 year old. So I just think it should be more hands on and more realistic.
I totally agree. I would make it much more practical and ongoing, less focus on checking a box for licensure, which there are certainly things that you have to learn to check the boxes for licensure, but more focus on what foster parents actually face in real time, like that behavioral escalation, trauma responses, navigating systems like how do I actually get the Early Learning Coalition to give me a certificate to get this child into daycare? Because maybe I learned that week 2 of training, but it's now 18 weeks later and I cannot figure the system out. So, advocating for services, those practical things like how do I do this? What is the avenues? And maybe some like documentation or follow up on how to actually do those things. And then I also think that mentorship is really important. Our agency does have a mentorship program, which is very valuable. But right now, it often falls on a small group of experienced foster parents, and they are already balancing a lot. So when you're already balancing a lot, and then you're fielding questions from new folks who are also trying to balance a lot and are oftentimes feeling in crisis, that can be really overwhelming. There's also not a whole lot of structure to it. Someone gets assigned a mentor and then the mentor just helps them. So I would love to see mentorship more formalized across the board, clear expectations, better structure, maybe some level of compensation because it's a skilled relational work that takes time and energy to do well. So yeah, I think training should really prepare for real life and not just for licensing.
I was a mentor for our agency, Heartland for Children. And then I was their recruiter. I would drag everything out to an event and recruit, have them write their names down. Oh, for years. And then we went into this hub coordination, hub home platform. I would have 20 families and I would have to reach out to them every month. I have to keep asking them, what can I do for you? And then I slide TLC stuff in there. And I was the lead one because I had been doing it for so long. But you just don't get reactions back from the people. They don't, yes, they're dealing with things, but we're here to help you. So what we even found out that Sally needed a babysitter. So she calls in for a respite. And they're like, well, Joni lives around the corner. So they found out through this hub homes that the babysitter that you needed was literally around the corner. It helped. And I could tell them a lot more than Heartland could. So me being here so many years, maybe somebody's only fostering for 2 years, but I can tell them, I can give them a number to a therapist that doesn't take a referral. I can give them a dentist that I use. I can give them the doctors that I use. I can help diffuse all this problem before maybe it gets to Heartland. So then I do get a lot of people calling me and I don't have all the answers, but I want to just tell everybody everything in 10 minutes and just can't.
No, that's so true. I think that it kind of goes to what you were talking about, like trying to reach a case manager for a kiddo, and I need you to answer the phone. So for foster parents who can reach another foster parent that answers the phone, just even if you can't resolve everything, right, to have someone to talk to say, this is what I'm going through right now, and just be validated in that moment. So, so important.
Absolutely, because crises don't happen during business hours. They always happen on Fridays after 5 o'clock when nobody's going to answer their phone till Monday. So having that mentor that you can reach out to is absolutely invaluable.
Except for when the point is it is Friday at 5 p.m., you are reaching out to your mentor, and I am trying all the telephone numbers I'm telling them to try, and no one's picking up. So now we're in more of a crisis because, for example, the one child was really just beating on the other child, and I can hear it through the phone. So I'm like, if you got to call the police because I can't get through my ABCD list, nobody's answering the phone, nobody's answering my texts. So you have to go, this is your only choice for the safety of your other children in the home. But yeah, it's always Friday at 5 p.m.
Right. That's so true. But that also, again, it's hearing someone else say to you, like, you probably were thinking, I need to call the police, but there's a hesitation, right? Am I doing the right thing? And what is this going to lead to? But having someone kind of validate that, okay, this is where we're at right now, right? So we've talked a lot about different things about the system, but if you could change one thing about system support for foster parents, or how the system supports foster parents, what would it be?
When the children are transiting back home or into another family, they need to change it because they're either lingering or on Friday, you're dropping a child off for a weekend visit. You get a call that the order was signed at 3:15 and it's now 3:30 and you're not going to see that child again because now that child's going home. I'm running down to the after school program, dragging my kids out so they could say goodbye to Sally. And I'm calling my other daughter, say, here, Sally's leaving, say goodbye, all in a parking lot because that order was signed. Another one, I'm on vacation and I get called, the order was signed that she needs to go. Alice needs to go. Well, I'm 2 hours away. You want to send transport? But oh, this order was signed. I said, it's in your ballpark. I said, let me just keep her. Well, we can't. I said, don't pay me. Like, just let me keep her. We were leaving like the next day, but we were a couple hours away. So I wasn't going to obviously go back and forth. But I had to think of my other children too. And there was nothing wrong with this child. She was just going to a family member. But why are we signing it at 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon without letting us know? None at all. It's just like, oh, it's signed. You have to do this.
I would say if there's one thing I could improve, it would be communication and documentation sort of across the board. So, including those things like Lori was talking about. I feel like so many challenges could be prevented. First, if caregivers had a full picture of history, behaviors, triggers, what's worked before, especially for children who are transitioning from one home to another, and that information is available. When that information isn't shared or even documented, kids don't get the level of care they need because foster parents are left sort of trying to piece things together in real time. So that piece of documentation, but then just things like we've talked about, returning phone calls, being notified of changes to a case plan, getting timely referrals. Those things are foundational, but they don't always happen consistently. So I feel that when communication is strong, it sort of allows foster parents to respond appropriately and advocate effectively. If I know what's going on, if I feel informed, then I can respond appropriately. I'm not going to be frustrated. I can advocate appropriately. I can plan appropriately. But when that communication lags or isn't existent or there's those breaks in communication, it creates confusion, it creates delays, and that impacts everyone. It impacts foster parents, it impacts biological parents, service providers, and most importantly, it impacts the children, especially the children.
Thank you for all that. We're going to shift gears just a tad. You've both been part of the foster parent collaborative here at the Institute. We've worked together in developing a survey and distributing it to foster parents to, gain some insights. Can you share a little bit of what that experience has been like for you both?
It's probably the first time I've ever been involved with something like that. And I honestly, I sat back a lot and just took it all in. And I was thinking, well, this is a great idea. Why don't we get not just my CBC, why don't we get everybody's input? Going back and forth and let's pick this question, let's pick that question. I think I learned a lot of what we need to know to help and to set the foster parents straight. But like I said, I was sitting back, but I think it was an awesome idea.
I absolutely agree. It's been incredibly meaningful to be part of something where foster parents' voices are actually shaping research. Oftentimes, we're making decisions about foster families without including them, or we're reacting to crises in the system when we're creating policies or, programs. But this feels different. It feels proactive, it feels collaborative, and knowing that the insights coming out of this work could lead to real tangible change, I feel like that's really powerful.
I'm so glad to hear you say that. Myself and the other researchers on our team are former and current foster parents. So we've talked a lot about, well, we could develop a survey, right? Like we have insights, we have experience. But at the same time, I was thinking, you know what? I want active foster parents right now. Like, I don't want to make decisions for foster parents. I want to know what's happening right now. And what do we need to really know, right? What do foster parents really want to share and talk about? And same with you, Lori. I learned so much in the process as we were developing the survey and listening to you all talk about, what were your concerns, what were your experiences, some of the similarities you all have been going through, and some of the things that, I have been fostering for almost a decade now. And it seems like some of the same issues are still going on. And so, like, now how do we address them? How do we get these insights into the hands so that policies can be changed to support foster families, better? So when you think about the survey, we're starting to analyze the data and some of the upcoming findings. What do you hope we learn about what helps prevent challenges for youth and families?
Well, I will say the way it was written, I think it's great because then there's certain committees or researchers can just break it apart and help with that one. Because someone might be having this problem, the other one. So let's just see if you're paying for out of service, let's get to that part.
I love the idea and firmly believe in the idea that supporting foster parents is prevention. And I hope we learn what's already working well because there are things that are working and we can build on those things. But I also hope we're able to clearly identify the gaps so that we can better prepare and support foster parents from the beginning. Because when foster parents are set up for success, kids are going to be more stable and the outcomes are going to improve. So I don't want to identify the gaps for the sake of identifying gaps and saying, this is where it's not working. But when we can see where those gaps are, then we can work to help fill those gaps and provide support for foster parents and then provide better stability for children. So, yeah, I do think that supporting foster parents is prevention, and we need to get really clear on how to do that well.
Right. I think that the way the survey ended up being talked a lot about supports. And it's not how I think we initially thought it was going to go. Like a lot of the question talks about not just system supports, but like social supports and other supports foster parents might have outside of the system. But what has been working, what hasn't been working, what are those needs? And I think it'll provide some unique information about what our next steps would be. So, kind of to close out our talk today, our discussion today, can you share an example of something big or small that made a meaningful difference for a child in your home?
I have one, I'll say positive and one not so positive. So the reason I don't have a lot of issues is I only do 5 and below. So my adopted children were all under the age of 5 when I got them and then shortly after I adopted them. So I had a little girl. She's 16 years old now and she was 2. And she just came to us and it was neglect and she was a little blonde blue-eyed girl and it was so nice to see after eating vegetables and taking a shower and drinking water and stuff that her nails got hard, her eyelashes grew, her hair got soft, her skin got soft. So just those little things was a big eye opening for me with this child. So that's where I see that there's possibility you could change anybody's way of living. So another one is my one child I had at 3 months old and I adopted her just under 2 years old and fetal alcohol. I went to the fetal alcohol training every time, every time, every time. And not until she was in 3rd grade, and I was like, "Oh, now I know what you're talking about." So then I had to hit the ground running with what they were training me with. But just the fetal alcohol with the depression and the anxiety, you don't wanna see your daughter go through that. I say it's suicide attempts, self-harm, and it wasn't the child. I don't believe it's not the way I brought her up. I always say it's what, DNA and what that trauma was because you said it when she's in the mom and the mom was alcohol. But so every day I wake up, I'm wondering if this child is okay. And she has been, but I never expected that would, happen because, oh, I'm the only mom she knew. But no, it's the trauma she had that my other 2 biological didn't. So each child has their own story, obviously, and their own way to, raise them.
Thinking about something that made a meaningful difference, one of the biggest things that we learned through TBRI is the power of consistency and predictability, which we've talked about a little bit today. But we had a child who really struggled with anxiety around transitions. And once we implemented very consistent routines, especially around things like bedtime was always a trigger point that would lead to the big meltdowns, right? And once we were able to implement very consistent routines, it made a huge difference. So, same steps, same order every night. It sounds simple, but for a kid whose life had been very unpredictable, that kind of consistency was uncomfortable for that child at first, but over time, it allowed their nervous system to settle. And we would see that when we got outside of routine, if we went on vacation or if something happened, Lori and I have talked about this before, that when you get out of routine, those things would come back. So even when we go on vacation, we try to keep those routines as same as possible, as close to the same as possible as they were at home. Because really, when their body feels safe, everything else, like, their behavior, their connection, their learning, it starts to shift. Because when their brain is stuck in that fight or flight all the time, then the first thing that's going to happen is those big behaviors. But once their body starts to feel safe and they can feel safe, then those other things start to shift. So that consistency isn't just structure, it's what helps the child's body to finally feel safe. So just that consistency and structure and predictability is a small thing that made a huge difference for many of our kids, but that one in particular.
For vacations, I learned to rent bigger places. You're in a hotel room, even though it sleeps 6 and you have 6, the bathroom. Now we do houses because they could do their routine. They took 10-minute showers. We try not to eat past a certain time. And we were back in the room at a normal 7 o'clock ish, wind down, take a shower, wind down time, and then bedtime. So it's hard, but you have to do it.
So true. I was thinking about when you mentioned when you had a new kid in your home and the one knew, okay, you're going to shower before me because you're older, right? Like, so it's not only the individual child, but everybody understands the routine, right? And I feel like that's kind of like, and maybe the theme we came up with today, right? Like what is prevention? It's routines and keeping things consistent, right? Not just in the home, but even systematically, right? Like if we can be consistently calling back foster parents, consistently documenting, and everything stays in this routine, everyone knows what to expect. And so when big things happen, we have the capacity to manage that. Lori and Selena, thank you for sharing your experience and the important role foster parents play in supporting families. If you're interested in learning more about this episode and our guests, please visit our website at www.ficw.fsu.edu. You can also follow the Institute on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at FSU Child Welfare. Thank you to our podcast producers, Brantley Jones and David Heller. Finally, thank you to all of you for tuning in. I'm Vivian Ko for the Florida Institute for Child Welfare.